Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. And it's always a pleasure to be here to talk to you a little bit about the TradeStation technology. Today, we're going to highlight a particular feature of TradeStation, which is strategy automation. I find strategy automation to be a fascinating tool that's part of the TradeStation platform and everyone here can use. So we're going to talk about the details and some of the things that you need to be aware of when you're planning to automate strategies on TradeStation. The title of today's presentation is Automating Strategies and Understanding the Process. So before we get started, here's the usual disclosures. Keep in mind that every single idea that we talk about is for educational purposes only, that these are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, that active trading is not suitable for everyone, and that past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. For additional information on these disclosures, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. All right, guys, thank you for making it to class. Let me go ahead and switch over to my TradeStation platform and get the presentation started. By the way, today we don't have any downloads. We don't have any custom studies or any custom workspaces because this is a class where we just focus on the TradeStation technology, and you have an opportunity to also ask questions. So I'm going to be glancing at the chat window once in a while to make sure that I'm addressing all your questions and concerns, especially on this topic of strategy automation. Let me go ahead and open up a chart. That's how we get started. The symbol doesn't matter. The time frame is important in strategy trading, but not important, to explain the functionality or the tool. I'm going to switch this chart to a daily chart. This is, by the way, this is Agilent Technologies. It just came up because I was looking at it the last time I was looking at, TradeStation. One thing, and I did say that, the time frame is something that strategy traders need to be aware of because the strategy will always respond to the interval. So if you have daily bars, the strategy will evaluate conditions every day, and it will put or generate orders for the following day. So every day there's an opportunity for the strategy to do that. Of course, once the orders are generated, these orders are active on the current bar and they'll be filled throughout the day. But the evaluation part only happens once every bar. So if you do have a daily chart, then that evaluation to see if the strategy is going to enter trades happens once a day. Now, if you have a 1 minute chart, that's a strategy that is very active because every minute it'll evaluate the conditions and decide whether it wants to place a trade or not. So it's important that we are aware of this because time frame, it's a big factor into how active the strategy is going to be. So I'm going to stick to daily bars, and if anybody has any questions on time frame and how it affects the strategy, we can dive deeper into that subject. But I'm going to stay on the daily chart of Agilent Technologies. I'm going to go here to the studies menu and add a strategy. In automating strategies, TradeStation provides out-of-the-box strategies that you can insert into a chart and automate out of the box. Of course, these are just strategy components, meaning that we want you to mix and match the strategy components to create a strategy of your own. If the components are not something you want to use, then of course you can create a strategy from scratch. If you have your own methodology, you know exactly when you're going to enter and exit positions based on either technical indicators or whatever the rule may be. Yeah, you can create those rules into easy language and have strategy follow them. But since we don't have a custom strategy, or we're not going to share a custom strategy today, we're just going to use the ones that come supplied with TradeStation. Let me go here to add strategy. And we can use something simple or something complex. It doesn't really matter. I just want a strategy that generates buys and sells. Let me go here to the price line. This is a price channel, long entry and short entry. Okay, once I put the price channel into the chart, of course, it's going to automatically every single instance where the strategy would have generated a trade. I haven't done any testing on this particular symbol or this particular strategy, so I'm not sure how well this strategy performs on Agilent Technologies, but we're going to take a look. One of the things that I do when I use a strategy that is part of the TradeStation list of strategies is that I always insert the study that goes along with it, because the study or the indicator will give you a very, very good visual of where those trades are being generated, and the reasons why the trades were generated. A lot of times, if you just leave the strategy on, you're not really sure what triggered this long trade, for example, of what triggered the short trade. So let me go over here to the studies list and go to add study. Most of the time, you're going to find a study that goes along with a strategy. So they go hand in hand. Most of the strategies we have on TradeStation are because they're based on popular indicators that already exist. Price channel is one of those. So if you come here to the indicators, you're going to find a price channel indicator. Let me just put it on the chart. And there it is. It's an upper band and a lower band. And you can see how the strategy is based on that signal. The indicator itself doesn't generate the trades. It does provide you a visual of when the crossovers happen so that you understand why there is a trade where it is. So if you wanted an indicator that triggers trades, that's something that cannot happen. So the indicator will only give you the visual, the plot, the drawing. And then you have to have a strategy separate that generates the trades. That's why you saw me in this particular instance add the two separately. I added the strategy and I added the indicator. It doesn't matter which one you add first because they're independent. They don't feed from each other. So you can add the indicator first and then add the strategy. You would be completely all right. All right, so a little bit about this indicator, which is the price channel. The price channel is a simple and straightforward study that keeps track of highest high and lowest low for a particular look back period. So it's going to say, okay, in the past 20 days, what has been the highest high and the lowest low? And if today's bar breaks that upper high or the lower low, then it'll trigger a trade. If it breaks to the upper side, it'll trade a long. And if it breaks the bottom band, then it'll trigger a short. So if you look at the chart here that we have on the screen, and I'm just squeezing the chart a little bit so that we can see a little bit more trades, you can see that the price activity is within these two bands, and that's why it's called the price channel. But every so often, you're going to see the candlesticks or the bars penetrate the upper band and the lower band. The very first time that they penetrate after an opposing trade, and what I mean by that, the first time that it penetrates after a short trade, you get a long trade. Or the first time that it penetrates the lower band after a long trade, then you get a short trade. So, so in this case, let's take a look at this trade that where my cursor is. You saw that prior to this trade, I was in a short transaction, and I can tell that because I have a red arrow right here on this bar, so I'm in a short trade. By the way, this is something that I didn't specify or didn't clarify at the very beginning of the presentation, but when I went to add the strategy, you saw two of them, or I added two of them. I added one that had an LE at the very end, and then added another one that had an SE. So LE and SE. What's the meaning? Well, LE is the long entry and SE is the short entry. So those are the two strategies that I have on the screen. They're designed to only enter the market. There's no exits. However, since we have opposing signals, meaning that I have a long and a short, and you cannot be both at the same time. You can either be long or you can be short a security. Otherwise, the trades would be rejected. But since this is a strategy that is generating both long and short, it'll act as a reversal strategy, meaning that if you are in a short trade and the strategy generates a long trade, then it's going to cover your short in order to go long. And the same happens if you are already long. If you're long and the strategy says, well, I need to go short, it'll sell whatever you have long and then take you short. So it reverses the strategy. So even though I did not add a specific and individual unique exit, it does it automatically for me because it's a reversal strategy. And that's why over here where I was pointing, we were in a short trade. And for all these bars within this channel, we were in that short trade. But all of a sudden, you see this candle that penetrates. It breaks the upper band. And the strategy says, hey, I need to enter a long trade. So I'm going to exit this short trade in order to go long. And you can see a little bit more detail on that strategy by doing the following. You can click on the background and you can hold the mouse button. And this will give you that floating box, which we call the data tips window. And you can bring that data tips window and put it right on top of that candle where that long trade or that arrow is. If you put that vertical axis where the arrow is, it'll give you details on what the strategy did. And if you look at the box or inside the box, you can see that towards the bottom, you have two rows that go into the strategy details. And you can see that the first thing that it did is that it covered 100 shares at $135.66. And it bought 100 shares at $135.66. It all happened in a fraction of a second, and the strategy assumes that this was a perfect fill. In real market conditions, if you had to cover a short trade and enter a long trade at the same time, it would be difficult to get filled at exactly the same price. But the strategy doesn't see that. It sees that, oh, I need to get out of the short trade and I need to get in a long trade. I'll do those two at the exact same price. But they're happening on the same bar. You need a selling transaction to get out of the short, and then an entry transaction to get you into the long trade. Does that make sense? All right, so this is just a little bit of setting up the strategy because it's important that we know the beginning of the process, adding the strategy, understanding the signals, and making sure that we are aware of what's happening. Of course, you can add more strategies if you want to. I see a lot of trades here that would have benefited from a stop loss. For example, over here, you can see how the strategy generated this long trade because it penetrated the upper band. It did go in my favor for a few days, but all of a sudden, we dropped and we dropped significantly and we have a huge gap right here. And it wasn't until all the way down here that it actually was able to cover, I'm sorry, was able to sell my long trade. So maybe with a stop loss, we could have managed this trade a little bit better. You see a similar behavior on this short trade. Yeah, that single bar penetrated the lower band. It actually went against me for a while. It came down again. So over here, we were kind of breaking even, but then it went up again. And it wasn't until this bar right here that it penetrated the upper band and said, hey, I need to exit that short trade. So maybe some risk management trades here would help this strategy in particular. Before we go into the automation part, which is what the main topic of this presentation is, I want to go and take a look at the strategy performance report to see what it looks like. Okay, so it's completely red. You can see that. Let me go ahead and click on this collapse because it'll give me a more summarized view of my strategy. You can see that this is a strategy that is losing money. But then again, the total number of trades here is only 15. 15 is a very small pool of trades from which to make an assertion that the strategy doesn't work. Now, I would want more trades than that. And statistically, it is said that around 30 to 40 trades is a good number of trades to have a good understanding of the strategy behavior. But a lot of times, I need more than that just to make sure that I'm looking at a strategy that is behaving the way that I want, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and see how inserting a stop loss, or a profit target would benefit my strategy. I'm going to go here to studies and add strategy. I'm going to do a profit target and a stop loss. I'm going to do the multiple selection. I can hold down the control key and select them both. Okay, they go in the screen or they go in the strategy automatically. It didn't give me a chance to modify them. And you can see that they're probably a little bit too tight because it's getting me out too quickly. In fact, if I go back to the strategy performance report, this is just default settings. Even though that happened, I see a lot of trades. You can see that the strategy turned profitable. I haven't even touched the strategy or optimization. I haven't looked at the settings, but by just adding the profit target and the stop loss, even at the tightest setting, which seems it's right now, it's a profitable strategy. We have 60 trades here. It gives you a better measure of trades. But you can see that short trade that we entered, was exited on the same day because of that stop loss. And over here, we have the short trade one more time, and it was exited again. The default amount for that stop is 1 point. And on a security like Agilent Technologies that is trading at $140, and you're trading on a daily chart, this may be very quickly hit. So the stop is a little too tight. Let me go ahead and modify the strategy. I'm going to double click on one of these arrows. And let me set my stop loss to 5. And my profit target, I'll set it to double that amount, to 10. Okay, I see a little bit more space between the trades. This short trade was still exited where I wanted it to exit. This long trade didn't. It didn't quite hit my stop for it to hit the stop down here, but it didn't hit it, up here where it could have saved, this drastic drop. But if I go back to the strategy performance report, I'm back on a losing trade, on a losing strategy performance report. Okay, but that's out of the topic of presentation today. But I should have kept it on the default values. Okay, but let's say, for example, that you do your homework and you look at the strategy, you look at the settings, you modify here, you optimize over there, and then you find a strategy that you're comfortable with, and you say, well, this is a strategy that I think will perform well, and you want to automate it. The next step in the process will be to automate it using the trading simulator to see how it generates trades with live data. Every strategy that you put inside of a chart will be historical only. So don't be afraid of adding strategies, because you do have to jump through a couple of hoops in order to make the strategy automated. The first step is to add the strategy on the chart. It'll be a historical performance or a historical calculation. You'll see signals showing up here, on the front, but it's not in an automated way. This is just being calculated every time that there's a new bar. But let's say that you've reached that stage where you're comfortable and you want to automate this. What do? Well, I'm going to format the strategy or edit the strategy. I believe that if you go to studies, it'll say, edit strategies. A shortcut that I use to get to this menu is to double click on the arrows. I find that easier. I'm not sure if you find that easier as well, but if I double click on one of the arrows, it just takes me to the same dialog. Okay. This is where I find all my strategies that I've added. And to automate the execution, all you need to do is come here and go to the automation section, generate strategy orders for display in TradeManager's strategy orders tab. For a lot of people, this statement is a little confusing. What is it trying to tell me? I'm automating it, but not for execution. This checkbox, or this first checkbox, is to generate strategy orders for display in the TradeManager's strategy orders tab. Where is that, and why is this important? Well, let me uncheck this first, and let me show you what that is referring to. I'm going to open up a TradeManager window, Apps, and TradeManager. The TradeManager window, I'm going to position it down here so that we can split the screen between the TradeManager and the chart that I have on the top. So let me resize my chart. so that I can see my trade manager at the bottom. And what the strategy automation checkbox is referring to is these two tabs that you find in the trade manager: strategy orders. Let me click it. You see that it's blank, and strategy positions. And you can see that it's blank as well. These two tabs, strategy orders and strategy positions, which you've probably seen when you go to the trade manager, will only show information if you've turned on automation. This is like a link between what the strategy is doing and what the trade manager is showing you. So we're going to use both. We're going to use the strategy on the chart to generate the trades and do all the calculations that we were going to do, or use the trade manager as a way of monitoring the orders that are being generated. It's important that you monitor the orders, because that's the only way that you're going to confirm that the strategy is doing exactly what you intended the strategy to do. So yes, look at the chart, look at the trade manager, and see how it's generating the orders. So let me go back here to my strategy settings. Let me double click on one of these arrows. And I'm just going to check the checkbox for automation. And let's repeat again what it says here: generate strategy orders for display. Notice that it says for display and not for execution. So this is like you wanting to see the orders that the strategy is generating. So it's going to do that in the trade manager's strategy orders tab. Where's the strategy orders tab? Down here, strategy orders. So I'm just going to leave that checkbox on, and then I'm going to come back and do some further, customization here. I'm going to click OK. And as soon as I do that, notice how the trade manager, notice that I'm in the strategy positions tab, by the way. Strategy positions, it's giving me information now because I've created that link. What is it telling me? It's telling me that on the symbol A, which is a symbol that I have here on the chart, that's the symbol for Agilent Technologies. On a daily time frame, I'm flat. What does that mean? That I have no position open. Is that true? Is that something that I can confirm? If you look at the chart over here and you pay attention to what's happening right now, if you notice a couple weeks ago, the strategy went short. This happened on September 11th. We went short because we had a penetration right here on the bottom band, and the strategy or the price activity, instead of going in that same direction, it actually headed up. And you can see how the stop loss was triggered on September 18th. That's when the short trade was exited. What happened after that? We haven't gotten a trade, but we're flat. And that's what the strategy positions is showing us right here. If I go to the strategy orders, something very interesting is happening here, because I have two orders generated. I see two rows right there in the strategy orders tab. Why is that? It's because the way that the strategy was designed, it's already keeping track of two levels. What are those two levels? It's keeping track of the upper level, which is the cyan line, and it's keeping track of your red line at the bottom. That's the price channel. It already knows what those levels are. And if you guys remember what we said at the very beginning, we said, well, if the price activity, penetrates any of these bands, then I'll have a trade. Well, the strategy is doing that precisely. Take a look. The very first row is a trade for 100 shares. The trade is active, is unsent because it hasn't been sent. It's the strategy is keeping track of the values, and it's held because of price. Yeah, the strategy order hasn't been sent because the price conditions need to be met. What are those price conditions? Well, that it needs to hit a stop price of 143.45 and 134.24. How did it get these stop values? It got them from the two lines. In fact, let me go ahead and click here. All right, and then lower it down. Notice how my axis is on the current bar, and you can see the values for the upper band and the lower band because they are in cyan and they are in red inside this box. And it's 143.44 and 134.25. The two prices that you see down below are 1 penny higher than the upper band or 1 penny lower than the bottom band. So the lower band is 134.25. My stop is 134.24, 1 penny lower. Why is that? Because we want to confirm the breakout. We just don't want the price to touch the line. We want the price to be exceeded. So that is something that you find and you see very clearly in the easy language order action as well. Let me show you where I would go to find that. I'm going to right click on, for example, any of these. Let me do the long entry and I go to edit easy language for the strategy. I'm just going to open up the LE, which is the long entry. And the syntax here for the long entry, notice that it says buy next bar at the highest high. That's how it finds, you know, the highest high for the look back period plus 1 point stop. So it's generating a stop order 1 point higher than what the band is. I find that very clear in the easy language. So yes, the strategy is ready to submit these two trades. If the conditions happen, you know, if the breakout occurs, if the prices here are hit, which is interesting. Now, let me automate the strategy fully to see what happens next. And I want to look at my strategy positions one more time, because right now, this strategy position says flat, but notice that we have a whole series of different columns where I don't see any information whatsoever. Well, strategy P&L will be blank because I'm flat, but position match is something that will display open position and position match. Let's go ahead and see what happens next. Okay, let's go ahead and double click here on the arrow. I check this second checkbox that says automate execution, and you get this pop-up, which is a disclosure. It just tells you that you need to be aware that you're automating a strategy. This will potentially allow strategy generated orders to be placed. Please read carefully. Just a warning, you know, it's a warning that you need to be aware of what's going on here, because if you have a very active strategy and you are not really aware of it, you could be, you know, executing trades without even knowing. Not at this stage though. This is enable order generation. If even if I click I agree here, notice that there's another setting here that says account, we're using this account with confirmation on. So even if I wasn't really sure that or aware of what the strategy could do, leaving confirmations on would allow me to always get a confirmation window anytime that the strategy wanted to place a trade. And that, you know, acts as a little bit of protection in case that you really didn't want to, you know, trade this strategy the way that it's trading it. So that's why I recommend, as I said at the very beginning, for you to always test your strategies on the trading simulator, because there's no risks involved and you can see how the strategy behaves. Now, let's go ahead and leave confirmation on. I'm just going to click OK here. And notice what happens. There's two additional items that I see here on the strategy positions tab. I see an open position that says flat and a position match that says true. What just happened and what did it do? Well, what it did is that it went to the real account, meaning this is a trading simulator, but it looked in my trading simulator. It found that I did not have a position open for Agilent Technologies, and it said, I'm flat too. So not only is the strategy flat, but in my real account, I'm also flat Agilent Technologies, making the positions match true. When it finds a position match that is true, it is said that the strategy is aligned with the real world, whether that's a simulated real world or a live real world, okay? But at least the strategy and your real account are in sync. If I had a real position, then the position match would be false. Let's go ahead and test that. Let me go here to the trade bar. I'm going to trade 100 shares of Agilent Technologies. I'm just going to say, let's do a market order, and I'm going to buy the 100 shares.
Order filled.
Not sure if the sound came across, but my order got filled, and I want you to see what happened down below. My strategy position remains flat because nothing happened on the strategy side. What happened is that I went into my trading simulator and I added 100 shares to my account. So now my open position in my simulated account is long 100. And now it sees that I'm flat in the strategy. I'm long 100 shares of Agilent in my account, so the position match is false. So anytime that you want to check if the strategy is in sync or aligned with your real account, then you can come here and say, oh, it's false or true, because this is a clear indication if the strategy is in sync or not. So let me go ahead and close that position. Right click. I'm going to close A, at market.
Order filled.
Fills it, and now we're back on position match true. Of course, this is something you have to play around with, because a lot of times, I just came here to the strategy that was flat, but maybe you come here to a strategy where the strategy is not flat, and then you have two options. You can either enter the position yourself or allow the strategy to get in sync. And I'm going to show you the two behaviors. Let's suppose that I had not added the stop loss. I'm going to select the stop loss. I'm going to press delete on the keyboard, and I get this pop-up that says, which strategies do you want to delete? And I want to delete the stop loss and the profit target for this reason. I want to be in a position right here at the very end, or the very current bar of the chart. I'm going to click OK. And now, of course, we get this warning. These are some of the strategy automated warnings that you're going to get once in a while. And it's good that I'm getting them right now, because you can see how they work. It says a change has been made to the underlying symbol and or strategy that may affect the strategy automation. And it's asking, would you like to disable the strategy automation? And I'm going to say, no, don't disable it. But now take a look at what happens down here. My strategy says that I'm short. In fact, you can confirm that by looking over here to the right, and you can see how the signal here on the strategy is short. By the way, these other signals that you see on the current bar, those are the trade that I placed on my simulator. So a lot of times when I have my strategy and I'm doing back testing on my strategy, and I have these arrows on my screen, the red and the blue, sometimes what I do, I disable, the strategies display, or the trading activity display, so that it doesn't conflict with my analysis. So if you want to get rid of those arrows that represent, the real trades, just go to the settings menu, account orders and positions, and then uncheck the status for that data. So it breaks the connection between Agilent Technologies and the real account. When you click OK, you can see how that information goes away. Now, a lot of times that information is useful, because if you're running a strategy, especially if it's automated, you'll see what the real position is on the right-hand side. In this case, you can see that my strategy thinks that I'm short. Well, the strategy is short. It doesn't think that I'm short. It just is short. And in my real account, I'm flat. I don't have shares of Agilent Technologies. In fact, the last trade that I had was a long trade. So even in that sense, no, it doesn't even match. So since that's the case, then position match here says false. Notice how all this other information is visible now, because now there is a strategy P&L. Even though my position match is false, there is a P&L associated with the strategy. On that short trade, since it only went in my favor the day after, you can see that it's going against me after that. The strategy is losing about $700 right now as we speak. Again, this is all theoretical because it's all strategy, but you can see the connection between the chart and what the strategy is doing. Since this is the case, since the strategy is short and in my account I'm flat, I have two options now. I can enter a short trade so that it matches. I think we did that with the long trade that we were seeing just a moment ago. Or I can tell the strategy, hey, strategy, look at my real account and adopt anything that you see there, because now the strategy will be in sync. And that's a feature that I'm going to show you here on how to make the strategy in sync with your real account. Let me go ahead and double click on any of the strategy signals. I'm going to go to this button that says properties for all. It applies to all the strategies. That's what properties for all means. It's just properties you can set for all the strategies that you've added to the chart. And in here, we're going to focus on the automation section. Inside the automation section, I can split this into two main boxes. You have the strategy fill logic box, and then you have the stop orders box. In the strategy fill logic, you have two options. Strategy will fill non-historical orders based on price activity, or strategy will fill non-historical orders only when the trade manager reports them as filled. What does that mean? Well, the default one means that the strategy is going to be independent. It's going to fill orders based on price activity. Do you guys remember when we were looking at the two trades on the same bar that happen at exactly the same price? Because that's all that the strategy sees, the price. And if it sees the price, it's going to fill the order. That's what that means. The strategy will fill non-historical. Think of non-historical orders based on price activity. Non-historical means real-time trades, non-historical. I know that in the historical backtest, that's exactly what happens. It just looks at price. But in real time, it also could just look at price and say, I just got filled because I saw the price. Now that doesn't necessarily jive with real market behavior, because you could be sitting there waiting for the order to get filled, right? There's something called slippage that maybe the strategy doesn't see unless you turn it on. So this other option that's down here says strategy will fill non-historical orders only when the trade manager reports them as filled. How does that behave? Well, the behavior here is that it'll look at your order. So the strategy will say, okay, I want to send an order to buy or sell short. And it sends the order. But the strategy will wait until the trade manager says, hey, I've already filled the order. You can go ahead and continue, for the strategy to show the signal on the chart. So it's kind of keeping the strategy in check and making sure that the strategy is aligned with the real world, because it's waiting for confirmation from the trade manager for that order to get filled. Hopefully this makes sense, because these settings over here are really important to set whenever you're running an automated strategy. But what I wanted to show you here, and I wanted to explain these two buttons, and maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, because I wanted to show you some other automation windows. But here there's a checkbox that says adopt the real world position for the current account. That's what I wanted to show you right now. What that does is that it looks at the real world, it looks at your real account, and it adopts whatever position it's there. So in this particular case, if it were to look into my account and see that I have a position open for Agilent Technologies, it'll say, hey, that position is what I want for my strategy from this point on. So now the strategy can then decide what to do with that position, but it's just at that point where the strategy says, I want to take on this position. If I turn that on and I click OK, it's just telling me a warning here that if I proceed, it'll make a change of the strategy, yada, yada, yada. It's okay. Would you like to disable the strategy automation? Not at this time. I'm going to say no, and then click OK. Notice what happens here. On the far right side of my strategy, you see a new arrow that says assume as X. That is the strategy saying, I'm going to assume this position as if I had generated it. And notice that it says a 0 right under the word assume, because it's closing your position. And you can see that from this short entry all the way to this exit, you have a profitable trade. It's just a strategy. It's forcing the strategy to take that trade so that it aligns with your real position. So now, if I look at my trade manager, you can see that not only my strategy position is flat, but also my open position is flat. So the position match is true. What I'm trying to say is that when you automate strategy, the true position match is important because you have to keep the strategy aligned with what is happening in your real account. Otherwise, you may get conflicting orders. For example, if the strategy says, hey, I want to go long, and you are already in a short trade, the order, that's a good question. I don't believe the strategy order can exit a short position that you manually entered. Maybe it can. I haven't tested it, but there could be conflicting orders. What you want is the strategy to always be aligned with what's happening in your real account. All right. I see a question here in the chat. It says, hello, I'm using the stop loss LX strategy. In easy language, it reads, the strategy does not include entry bar protection. Could you explain what that means? Does not include entry bar protection. What that means is that I know it's sometimes, the wording is kind of confusing, but what that means is that when you use that strategy, it will not kick in on the entry bar. So let me show you. Let me put back my strategy. I'm going to go here to studies, add strategy, and I'm going to select the stop loss. I'm not going to disable automation, but I want you guys to see this strategy does not include entry bar protection. In this particular case, it is exiting on the exact same bar. Interesting. Let me go back here to the easy language to see where that is for the stop loss. Just a parenthesis here to take a look at what the strategy code says here, because the way that I'm reading it, it says, yeah, it doesn't protect you on the entry bar, but it's actually doing it. It actually protects you. Okay. I think my development environment may have crashed. Oh, there we go. So, okay. So this is stop loss. Is this the right strategy that you're using? Because I don't see the wording that says it doesn't include entry. Oh, you're doing the stop loss LX strategy. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Because I think I opened up the wrong one, right? So this is just a regular stop loss. Let's go here to remove this stop loss because this one is activated on the same bar. Let me remove this stop loss. Click OK. Because I think the other stop loss is the one that checks to see what position you have. I'm going to go here to add strategy. And let's take a look at stop loss LX, which is the one that Felix is using. Now, you can see that, well, first of all, the stop loss that was here is not here any longer. And maybe because this stop loss is a different setting. Let's see if it's still a 1. Yeah, the stop loss is still a 1. But you can see that the stop loss is always going to kick in 1 bar after. So it doesn't provide that entry bar protection as the regular stop loss does. Why is that? If I go here to the easy language of this one, edit easy language for stop loss LX. Notice that there is an if-then statement that delays the trigger of the stop. It's going to check that the market position equals 1. What that statement means is that it's going to check that you are in a long trade before it generates the stop loss. And of course, the entry bar is not counted. So when you generate an entry on the bar, it's not until the end of the bar that it says, okay, I'm already in a long trade. Let me generate a stop for the next one. So it doesn't offer you protection for the entry bar. If you wanted protection for the entry bar, choose the stop loss that does not check for any particular position. It just generates a stop, whether you are long or short. Okay. Any other questions? Let's go ahead and take a look at, I think I'm running out of time. So what we're going to do is there is a follow-up to this class that goes into, the settings, and we see a little bit more, we see the strategy a little bit more in action. We may see some trades even be generated in real time, because I like my strategy and I sometimes reduce the time frame to something smaller, like a second chart, just to see those strategy generating orders live. But there's a few things that we haven't talked about today that we're going to talk about in that follow-up class, where we talk a little bit more about the properties of the strategy. So we're going to leave the presentation right now up to this point. Remember that there's a follow-up to this presentation that will happen probably in a few weeks that talks about, some of the properties of automation, but at least you got the basics on how to turn on automation with confirmations on. That's something that you would want to do, at least on the beginning stages of strategy automation, if you're just getting started, so that you can monitor the strategy and see the orders that are being generated. That is something that you must do. And also make sure that you turn on the strategy on the simulator, even though it's not 100% equal to a live environment. It's very similar, very close to it. So you're going to carry those same behaviors from the live simulator, from the simulator to the live setting. So make sure that you do that, all right? But I'm going to end the class right now. Hopefully, you followed my presentation. If you have any questions, join me on my next strategy trading class, and I'll make sure to clarify those questions for you. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you in a future class. Goodbye, everyone. Talk to you later.